Hi guys, this is John Goodwin, Chief Shop Steward in Boston. You may have had the pleasure of watching the um, other recording of me going through the CBA. I'm glad you came back to watch the sequel, which is the Motivate Attendance Policy. So starting off here, they have a basic little preamble like they had in the other agreement. They like preambles of sorts. And this basically, the bottom line is when you don't show up, it's bad and it puts a strain on everything. And in general, they gave you a job and they'd like you to show up. So in a timely manner. Not too unreasonable. One thing to keep in mind as we move into this year, Dayforce is kind of the center of the universe with regard to your schedule and PTO, sick time, et cetera, et cetera. So I know it could be a challenging piece of software, et cetera, and makes you change your password all the time, et cetera. But it's the wave of the future. I will point out one little handy thing that you can take advantage of if you're having computer or phone issues is at the time clock, you can actually select the option called self-service and you can bring up your earnings. And I'm not sure if you can do a PTO request off the top of my head, but you can get a lot of information right then and there. And all you need is whatever appendage you normally use to put your fingerprint down there. That's something to keep in mind. Second thing is to communicate with your manager. It's kind of the foundation of any good relationship. Just let people know what's happening. The more advance notice you give them, the better. Surprises are for birthdays, as they always say. Um, the shift swaps are also going to go through Dayforce. In Boston, we don't have many of those, so I can't speak to how they worked in the past. A long time ago, I remember we used to use a different software package, but haven't done that with Dayforce. But hopefully, it will go well. The new thing, at least for us in Boston and some other cities, is the concept of 3 excused absences per year for unforeseen days off. Some cities have called this freebies. So it's basically, and you can instead of calling out and using sick time, you can call out and use PTO, and so you can skirt around that 14-day requirement. And in a perfect world, it's like, oh, geez, I forgot my brother-in-law is coming into town. I've got to go to the airport. Something came up with my kid, et cetera, et cetera. So it's those unforeseen things. So there are 3 of those you get to use, which is actually really a pretty good addition I think, for most of us. No call, no show is a category that Boston, I think, has actually led in on, over the past few years. We seem to have at least a few people a year who just ghost out and disappear. But it's getting a little tighter now because, again, they gave you a job. Might be a good idea to show up. So the first no call, no show, you have to meet with your manager, and it's an immediate final warning, which lasts for 12 months, 1 year. And the second time you do it, you're gone. So obviously, bad things can happen. You could be in a coma. You couldn't get out from under the wreckage. Horrible things, etc. And those don't count. If you just ghost out, that's obviously it's not being tolerated anymore. Absences, again, if you have to call out, if you can pay yourself with STO or sick time off, then it's going to be excused. If not, then it's going to be considered unexcused, except with the number 6 above here, which is the freebies. So you've got a few options, and you've got 4 tries at the absence policy after the 3 freebies. So it's kind of generous, so people hopefully won't get into too much trouble there. We think it's a pretty good deal. One change with regard to sick time is that you can now request it instead of just a whole day or a half day. If you just need to leave it early to go to a doctor's appointment, then you can just have 1 hour of STO or 2 hours or whatever, something less than a half a day. So that's a little more flexibility. If you're absent for work for more than 3 consecutive work days without telling anyone, they consider that job abandonment, which has been, I think, in every city. So that's a bad thing, and as I like the way they say, you will be separated from employment. I like that, versus just kicking your butt onto the street. Anyway, the tardy policy. There's now a 10-minute grace period. Again, we had 6 in Boston. Some cities already had 10. I think that's pretty reasonable and works. I know in Boston it works well with regard to the MBTA schedules. Not that anyone's taking that these days, but In the future, we will again ride the subways. So that's, I think, pretty good. And with regard to remote workers, valets or field bike mechanics or possibly other jobs, you may have to use your key fob to actually clock in at the start or end of your shifts there. So, and again, it's the first time is a pass, and uh, two corrective actions, a final, and then termination. The good news about that, if you're really a fairly tardy person, it is that these corrective actions work on a 6-month rolling period. So that's a little more forgiving, I guess. Also, an early out. So if you leave more than 10 minutes early, that's considered a tardy. And I know some people in Boston who tend to leave early, but it's usually like they go pick up their kid, et cetera, et cetera. The manager knows it's a cool thing. People just agree to make less money, but that's okay. But just again, communication. Exempt absences are kind of straightforward: workman's comp, medical leave, jury duty, bereavement, parental leave, etc. So, and the last thing here, there was a lot of discussion about this reasonableness standard, also sometimes known as a pattern of behavior clause. From what we understand, it's really kind of never been used or maybe rarely used. It basically, if you're tardy, you've got this issue, you've got that issue, there's a thing going on, there's something going on that it could trigger a meeting or a coaching session with your manager and could lead to some discipline. It's a little bit squishy, I would admit that, but I think basically all the other criteria here with absences and tardies, no call, no shows, all those together add up to, to probably the way, if you're going to be disciplined, this is how it would happen. So um, the good news is separation of disciplinary track. So basically, everything here in the attendance policy, the no call, no shows, tardies, and absences are separate from other policy related things. So if you are written up for insubordination and you're on a second warning when you get a tardy, they're going to be on separate tracks. So that's a good thing if you're in that situation. So anyway, that's the attendance policy. Thanks for listening. Reach out to your chief shop stewards, anybody with any questions. Alrighty, thanks a lot. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. Take care.